Hello, Bill Kovacevic here again. Welcome to Module 12, Trends and the Future. Trends will be based in large part by the economic situation that, and particularly of late, we've been listening to bricks and mortar, the decline of bricks and mortars and shopping malls that are going bust because people are buying online and so on. These are social revolutions that ultimately impact all businesses, but everything is cyclical and people adjust. And one of the things that the sign industry must focus on, and we as a sign in the sign business really have to pay attention, is how we are going to adapt to the new social orders, if you will, or new economical orders. I'm not an economist and I'm not a seer, but I can tell, based on my experience and based on 50 years of watching the business cycles go in many different directions, that one of the things that we are going to have to pay close attention to is how we are going to integrate with the retail and the storefront and the visual, the image, the whole ball of wax when it comes to making signs. And one of these things is lighting. We are going to have to determine whether we are going to be collaborators with the lighting industry, partners, or whether we are going to have to absorb some of that knowledge and some of the techniques and technology and philosophy of lighting buildings. Here is a particular example, and it's an excellent example we participated in. We had an opportunity to work with the changeable RGB colors behind that curtain wall, that glass wall. But as it turned out, the designers, for pricing reasons, found another firm to be able to do that. And so that was one part that we did not get. The letters that you see there are low profile, trimless letters. This is something that I developed about 10 years ago when we wanted to have a dual color, white day, dark, and white at night and dark during the day. And we didn't want any the silver trim or the trim caps around it, so we developed this. And at that time, we worked at 3.5 inches. The Papa's design, they wanted something as slim, as low profile as possible, and sitting on a canopy, approximately 2 feet, projecting about approximately 2 feet, with no visible supports. This is one of the plant view of the letters prior to being finished. The returns had to be black. But we were able to suspend the graphics and create the illusion that these are floating letters. But the trick and the key here was how we supported the channel letters. They were welded to the back, and they were anchored to a channel that was also acted as a baseway for the wiring. And this sat on the canopy. If we can go back to the previous slides. To the first slide there, those are canopies. The wall surface, the surface is of Thespa. It's a sort of a granular concept. It's like an ACM, if you wish, but we're using gypsum and rock and cementatious type of substance to create this sort of a monolithic look. Very expensive and very difficult to work with, and something that sign people are going to be hearing more and more of. Those are the 5-foot letters that you see. There were 8 entrances. Those are 5-foot letters, again, trim cap and no visible soap. They actually sit on the canopy. The letters Les Promenades, they're all suspended, as you can see. And the butterfly concept for the corner, this is flat aluminum, projecting only 1 inch from the wall, and had a gel core contour, a GE contours around it. It's a unique project, but what makes this special and what makes this unique is that it was tied in with that effect that you see in the background, signs and lighting in harmony. This is perhaps an excellent example of where we're heading and how we have to be able to accommodate the overall picture of signs and lighting in harmony. Here's an excellent example of how architecture and lighting are being fused to create a retail image. This is from a 2006 VMSD magazine. I urge you to look through this every once in a while because it has some excellent applications for other sign projects. But this is the Apple Store in New York City, and using annealed tempered glass in a structural way. They have the whole area is done in glass, including stairways. And the focal point, of course, is that gigantic suspended apple right in the middle of that core. Again, we talk about integration of lighting and signs. We have to also understand that there are many different ways of cladding a building. Here's a unique concept. It's not ACM. It's not. It's acrylic, and it's an amazing application of acrylic to create a light show. The whole building becomes a sign. This is in London. Here are some excellent examples of what you can do. And when you look at acrylic and you think of it in solid terms, you can actually use you can use these layered extruded sheets to create phenomenal effects with lighting. So our role as sign people is to be able to understand and be ready to apply a lot of these materials in conjunction with. And I think ultimately what will happen, there's going to be a fusion. Either we become competitors or we become collaborators. But we need to understand, and it's going to be critical for us in the sign business to understand that this is the way retail is going to be shaped in order to reinvent and re-invite, so to speak, the passersby into a new retail environment. We're not going to get rid of the internet for ordering stuff, but retailers are going to be challenged to create an ambiance, a look that will invite people to come in and look at products for the touchy feeling sensation that the internet cannot provide. Here's another example of that inspire people that have their machines, their cutting tools, to cut out objects and create special texture surfaces. This is in Seoul. This comes out of the Architectural Digest. Again, I mentioned these magazines not only because of the source, but also because they provide inspiration to sign designers. They should, for things that can be done with architecture. If you look at the cross section here, these are static discs that are with LEDs in the background to provide this extraordinary effect, this shimmering effect. That to me is not only architecture, but that in itself is a sign. That is, the whole building becomes a sign, and it becomes an attraction, and it's part of identifying a location. That's what we should be focusing on as designers. Is we have to think that we are part of the whole process of identifying a location or a business or whatever. I bring kinetic architecture. We worked not too long ago with the ill-fated Target in Canada. We worked on a project that incorporated the concept of kinetic art it's inspired in large part by Ned Kahn. Now I urge you, if you Google Ned Kahn, there's several of his projects, most notably in Australia, where he does a whole front of a building shimmering. These are actually, and it's kinetic because the wind catches these things, much like wheat fields in the wind, where they have these shimmering shapes of sun and wind and so on. Well, this is done on a vertical plane, and it's amazing. I wasn't sure whether I could use it or not, but we have a target project that unfortunately had to stop, that incorporated the concept of these panels that would shimmer in the wind. Here's another look of it. It's spectacular when you see this in live action. It's a minimalist way of creating motion, and again, it stresses the importance that there's a blend of art, architecture, and there's no reason why science cannot be part of this process. Honeycomb. That's another material that you're going to be hearing more often from now. We're currently working on some projects, which unfortunately, and it is still in its planning stages, and I'm not free to discuss it. But I will show you what I'm showing you here is actually comes from something like 25 years ago, when I tried to create something for the bullnose for the shell program, and I looked into this polycarbonate thermoformable honeycomb-shaped panels. That company, by the way, has disappeared. You can't find them anymore. That the concept of using polycarbonate as a core materials has been taken over by several other companies, but this particular firm, Northfield, their claim to fame was they were able to provide the Trump Tower's vestibule and atrium has 3/4 inch slabs of marble attached to honeycomb panels like that, so that instead of using thick, huge pieces of marble like a Roman palace, you were able to veneer the whole interior and make it look like solid marble, but in effect it is applied to honeycomb. Honeycomb is well, it's an essence in aircraft, and because it makes huge jumbo jets take off the ground, because a lot of it is made out of composites, and the flooring and everything is done with honeycomb material. But in construction, you can now support marble, masonry, a whole variety. What you see in this particular picture, both the ceiling and the sides, everything that you see here consists of honeycombed supporting substrates like stone or porcelain, stainless steel. Just to give you an idea, the CBC headquarters in Toronto, those large pillars that you see entirely out of stainless steel are actually honeycomb paneled stainless steel, low gauge, but on a honeycomb it provides tremendous support. It is in Europe, spandrel walls on curtain walls, they use concrete clad honeycomb panels that look like solid concrete, and you could a whole variety of it provides strength and rigidity, and it supports just about anything. There are several stores now in the Ottawa area and in the Toronto area. The front are made covered in travertine. And travertine and marble and all of these classic stones and masonries are extremely expensive and very hard to support. The Mies van der Rohe building and in Toronto, the Toronto have very expensive marble travertine floors that today would cost much less, because they can now be supported by honeycomb panels. This is something we're going to have to understand and learn in the sign business, because storefronts will be clad with honeycomb supported substrates. There are other types of substrates also. For example, armor coat is a cement type, almost like a sheetrock, if you will, but it can be finished in a wide variety of textures and colors. And this just goes. This is a little project we worked on. The request was to how to incorporate signs into armor coat panels, with, of course, with a minimal thickness behind it, and you didn't have room for any light sources, so we used a light panel to create the illuminated effect. I show this only to demonstrate that we are now in an era of where we can talk about integrating the lighting system or the into almost virtually any. We are now free where we weren't before. We'd had a similar job like that would require at least 6 to 8 inches of sign cabinetry and fluorescence and guarantee accessibility. We have a lot of these issues completely gone. They've disappeared. And it's important for us to understand these materials and how we can incorporate signage. That is the future. Form follows function is what we have been doing from the very beginning in the sign industry. Today's signs are configured to accommodate physical, technical characteristics of lighting and electrical components. LED technology and lighting dynamics make it difficult to arrive at a new industry standards. And that is because, and to sort of put that in perspective, when incandescent lamps ruled the electrical world up until 1940, each lamp had its own mogul or lamp socket. And the U.S. government got a little fed up because that was a way of sort of extracting costs and pricing, and they imposed a standard for sockets. And that's why all sockets, whether they're from Sylvania or GE, the sockets became a standard configuration that any lamp by whoever manufactured the lamp would fit into a standard socket. Well, we haven't arrived at as far as LEDs are concerned, but we're getting close. In the sign business, we've had to adapt to many different things, and that's one of them. The future is really function follows form. That's how it's going to have to be. And that's where we in the sign industry as designers and manufacturers, we're going to have to develop a technology, a philosophy of how to work along those lines. Function follows form. Give you an example. LEDs, when they first came out, there was hundreds of manufacturers to achieve the same end, and these are prime examples. You see two different types of LEDs to achieve the same results. We're still at that, but it's being much more refined. They're getting to understand that the closer they get, they're better off focusing on the execution and the manufacturing and the efficiency of the LED as opposed to creating systems. We're the masters of creating channel letters, and we look for something that is most efficient and quick to produce. But this is an example, and I think we're getting away from that. Next trend that we all have to look into is architects and designers. They hate big boxes on the walls. So we have to look at skinning up. We have the opportunity. We have everything possible to make the signs thinner, slimmer. If the TV right now is, because of OLEDs and so on, are virtually paper thin, we are still making signs, bulky signs, and we're still trapped with the old. It's a transitional period, and I think we're getting there. We're ultimately getting to the a thinner, more integrated fascia sign. You'll recall in one of my previous modules, I talked about how we are incorporated into a spandrel wall. That is going to be the mantra of everybody in the retail business, is incorporate into my architecture. Don't look like an add-on. And that's where we're up to right now. Rethink the fascia sign also has room for the coiled plastic, not just the flexible face that in the preceding slide. And here, the actual solution to how to avoid oil canning in signs is by just drape forming it and giving it a slight curve. I've exaggerated this particular curve to show you one that's concave and one is convex. But in either case, we eliminate the need for mitering of corners. This idea that the extrusion that serves the top and bottom of the sign should also be on the sides. That's not important. With proper polymer designs and support systems, you can incorporate closed ends and allow for expansion and contraction, and at the same time eliminate the ugly oil canning. Just by straightforward, there's simple techniques for drape forming, even slight curvatures into a face. It's user friendly, it's pedestrian friendly, and it can be easily incorporated now with the LEDs getting more wide angle diffusion. We can achieve that. So rethink the fascia sign it should be an objective in the scheme of things. Heritage signs. I could get apoplectic here when I talk about the fallacy, historical fallacy that's imposed by a lot of town planners, and that's with the famous gooseneck. I did not want to show a gooseneck because I would be very upset. It still bothers me that this is imposed on the sign industry and on municipalities and our retails on the pretext that they're preserving the heritage look. It's false. Every archival photograph that you have of any municipality, goosenecks were as rare as chicken's teeth. Mainly because storefronts and the windows were the most important thing. A lot of people don't realize that what set off the vinyl industry was essentially the sign industry in Switzerland, where signs were not allowed to be backlit. No backlit signs were allowed, so they focused on the windows. And this is where the vinyl became so important, is decorating windows, storefronts. This particular instance, this is a situation where the architect in question did not want an illuminated sign, and it was going to impose goosenecks. And I was able to argue and say that if we made the sign as thick or no thicker than what a commercial sign, non-illuminated commercial sign would have been in the time that this converted St. Louis train station into a hotel, if we can convert and make that same thickness, we could backlight this thing, and it worked. I prepared a couple of sketches on how this can be done, and it achieved the purpose. We used dual color, gold dual color over red. At night it illuminates red, but it's no thicker. It's only 3/4 of an inch. I kept my word, and that there was no goosenecks. One of those rare victories over. And this brings us to what is trendy and what isn't, and how we have to present and learn to defend the integrity of our business. That particular sign that you see with the lips there, that is a roof sign on the Musée Contemporain de Montréal, the modern art museum here in Montreal. It was put up. It's an art piece. It's considered art. And if it's art, well, it's acceptable. In Montreal does not allow any roof signs, the notable exception being the Olympic rings, but this is, it's allowed. And those other pull these out of the print magazine, one of my favorite magazines over the years, where they talk about visuals, and where artists use billboards as canvases, if you will, and they're acceptable. And they put them in areas where billboards are not allowed. We are going to have to learn to define who we are and use these as an example of there's a contradiction here. So that there's a trend. The trend here is going to be that we are either going to be snuffed out and minimized and marginalized, or we stand up and be counted and we speak up. What can I tell you? If I try to be a seer, I think that signs ultimately will have some kind of interactive thing. I'm not a specialist. Now that they're going to have driverless cars steering without steering, and robot cars and so on, that you'd be sitting in there and you can pick your menu order ahead of time, find out what's going on. I should imagine that that's possible, and but that's not for me to I just put in this as a little bit of whimsy. Guy ordering his Big Mac by car. But solar power, that's something that we can look at. That is definitely here. University of Toronto, not too long ago, a paint that acts as a solar collector. So it's a powerful incentive to consider. In this instance, it's what I imagined a solar collector would look like to illuminate signs and other things in a restaurant. And wind power. I think that's possible. I think that I would have redesigned those propellers. I think they were more like airplane propellers than the typical windmills that you have. But that's just to illustrate the possibility that you can generate enough power with the new, very super efficient RGB screens. I see it not just possible; it's going to be probable, and I wouldn't be surprised to see these things in the near future. In closing this, I just want to you never know. Keep doodling it's something that I am never going to stop. And there's my little version of a rotating windmill sign, not too far from something that I did many years ago that accidentally the clutch gave in and it became a windmill. But signs are going to change. Signs are ephemeral. I repeat this because you cannot recover the signs that I've designed. They've disappeared forever. Maybe a picture somewhere, but most of the signs that I've ever designed have all gone, and it's going to go on. And that's what's beautiful about the sign business. You're always on to the next project. I thank you all for listening to me, and I most certainly thank Don Belanger for allowing me to express my love for this industry, to Robert Corsetti, Louise Mazzotti, and all the others, and certainly Solange Rousseau, who helped me put this together. And of course, I have to thank this great industry for allowing me to be part of its history, and I enjoy it so much. And I do hope that I have an opportunity to talk to you again and uncover the 70% I believe I couldn't talk about because of the compression of time. But I do hope to have another occasion to express to you how much I love this business, and how I hope that you can find it in you. There's a nook and there's a niche somewhere in this organization, whether you're a designer, a project manager, or an installer, or somebody out there. Or if you start as a designer, you can end up, who knows, you might even become the president of this company. It starts by just liking what you do, understanding this business, and keeping up with the trends, keeping up with the times, and look ahead. Always look ahead. Thank you. Goodbye.